Коллеги, добрый день.
Well, good morning, dear colleagues. Okay, we'll begin. I hope you enjoyed the tours yesterday, and this day you will be able to join other tours. Now, today we will talk about the light design and the design of the lighting in the museums, but we're not limited just to this theme. The first presentation is by Sergei Sizy, the head of the Association of Light Design, LDA. Good morning, colleagues. Now, not many of us are here today on the third day of the conference, but nonetheless, we're happy to see you. My presentation is a big one, and I don't think I will be able to cover everything within the time allocated to me. But if you're interested enough in my presentation, part of my book that is going to be published this year in the summertime is dedicated to different projects, and among others, there will be a detailed story of the project, of the current project. 2 days ago, I spoke about the concept of lighting in that museum. It's a project implemented. And today I will speak about the results of the implementation. I will compare things and speak about things that were implemented and that were not implemented. I have been introduced. So here you will find some of the museums with which we happen to work. And we worked with the Hermitage Museum and the Almaty Museum of Arts was added. Indeed, one of the best museums of contemporary art in the world, built in Kazakhstan. And so here is the project team, 13 professionals who worked on that project. And they were they're a team of the studio, but we also invite a number of professionals on the basis of outsourcing. So altogether, about 15 people worked on it. Over several years, we worked on the concept of the project, and we worked on all the aspects included. We worked with interior, exterior lighting, and of course with exposition lighting. This opening ceremony was held in September last year, and it took 2 days, and here are some pictures of that ceremony. So apart from the presentation of the museum itself and the opening of the exposition, there were different performances involved, and everyone was invited. Everyone who was included, Chapman Taylor, the British Bureau, and our studio of light design was also represented. A few words about the natural lighting. Not many of our colleagues work on that, but in this museum it was extremely important, and we worked on it. It was entirely our work. And I need to say that the museum has a big atrium, the Street of Arts, and it's built entirely on the impression created by natural light. So our goal was to think of the ways of dimming the light for that space, because here, in spite of the fact that there are no light-sensitive exhibits, there is this enormous space is going to be heated. So most of the work done was in the exhibition halls. We carried out a lot of calculations for lighting, for the destructive impact of lighting, and defined the parameters for the window frames and for the glass, which was bought following these clear-cut directions. And so there was different types of curtains, and screens were also commissioned, creating shadow and reducing the direct sun spaces on the walls, because they were, as we realized, could distort the impression of the art. The blackout screens were also bought. Here are the ceilings in the exhibition halls, caissoned, And here they can see as closed. And that's blackout, of course, yes. And well, of course, the architecture suffers as a result because the space is not light enough, and this was to be compensated somehow. So we thought of a way of how to um, use the light fixtures with gliding light, and this reflected light created the necessary background, which was necessary for the orientation in the space and for the mitigation of contrasts. So we will move from location to location. That's what people were seeing when entering natural light. Then in the evening, they were looking at the facades. At the facade, the lighting of the facades, that's one of the key points for us. And that was really a very important feature of the project. With the help of different projectors, we no, they use the technology of slide mapping. The slide projection makes it possible to have very effective images on the facade, and this is much cheaper than video projection. And here there were two types of projection. In the concept, there was abstract painting suggested for the metal part of the facade, and for the stone part of the facade, we planned to have a projection that would imitate architectural lighting. So it was a rather non-standard approach indeed, because indeed the geometry here is difficult with a lot of corners, and it's practically impossible to use light fixtures on that facade. So we even were planning to have architectural lighting with the help of projection, but the customer was greatly impressed with projections. And so this was used not only on the metal part of the facades, but on the stone part as well. So we can see here the combination as a result of two types of content, the abstract painting and national Kazakh motifs. And so the technology of the projectors is such that there was a revolver-like change of slides, and there are 6 scenarios that can be changed depending on different days of festivals and times of the year, seasons, and so on. As for the architectural lighting, classical methods were used here at the large balconies, and moreover, the light coming from the windows is there, but there is also light built into the floors, and it also gives light to the space. So it seems that the window is producing light altogether, although half of it is actually covered up because the media hall is in there. We minimized the number of supports in order not to somehow to interfere with the impression of the building itself, so that 12 masts and everything is put up on those. There's projection equipment and the light fixtures. As for the fountain, this lighting was designed by the company designing the fountain, and we were responsible for the terms of reference in order to avoid the variation of colors. And as a result, no, we could not overcome that. Our terms of reference were ignored, and at the opening, I actually was able to take pictures the way we actually expected them to. Say we wanted the fountain to be white in color. Now, sculptures play a very significant role. The sculptures that are out in the street, and these are not just sculptures, these are well-known artifacts which can be found in the leading cultural capitals of the world. And thus Almaty declares that they are a cultural capital. And what is so special about the lighting of the sculpture from above, Jean Plan's work? It was also done with the help of the sliding projection. We could not use just the spotlights because there would be enormous shades, and there will be an effect of blinding people who are in the building standing at the large windows. So we decided to have this sliding project, and we cut out all the necessary light. Nikolai demonstrated that at the masterclass how this can be done in a mini scale, but we did that at the scale of 22 meter high head. And the interior lighting, now that is the street of arts. So not everything we were able to implement. There's the flooding light of the walls, the wall washing. The light comes from the ceiling. Initially, we planned the ergo equipment, also represented to us today. I know that's perfect equipment, but after the replacement with this similar type of equipment, we were able to get a sort of darkening on the ceiling, because it's very difficult to create optics that would provide light, even light on the walls, without lighting what is not to be lit. So we also plan to have ground light fixtures to provide light coming from the floors, and to have a gradient, sort of amber-like in the scenario of the sunset, because the Street of Arts is an allegory of the famous Kazakhstan canyons, Kazakh Canyon, which resembles very much the Great Canyons in California. Now, it's also necessary to mention that we paid special attention to these local areas where people can relax. And this extends their time of stay with the walls of the museum. Here you can see how it is arranged at the perimeter. The lighting here is not that intense in order to provide a relaxing atmosphere. And in order to attract attention of the people here, the lighting comes from below the benches, and it correlates with a similar approach outside. So the idea of the architect was to have this gentle transfer from the exterior to interior. The buffer zone, again covered yesterday in our discussions, how we adapt and how our vision adapts when we move from one room to another in the museum. Yes, indeed, we ranged the halls by the exhibits with different sensitivity, light sensitivity. There are some halls with several hundred lux, because there is the first group of light resistance, but there are others with just 30 lux with the level of light resistance, fourth level. And so there's a great difference between them.
Создавали буферные зоны.
We created the buffer zones. These are corridors, and these are small entrance areas before the entrance to the halls with dimmed light, in order to be able to find a sort of an average volume of luminance. And so the designers worked on the corridors, and terms of reference prescribed the type of lighting not to violate the concept. The staircase, it was planned to have a light installation, a huge one indeed, as planned. According to our plans, it was to break the direct sun rays. But the museum administration thought that it would look like an artifact, and they could not afford that because they are representing art in general. So we said, no, you won't have to pay for that, I said. But still, they were cautious about that. The corridor of the second floor, it's another buffer zone. You can notice that there are twinned light fixtures. At the opening, they were all on, worked to 100%, but in reality, it's another method of lighting which can provide us with a lot of possibilities. Part of the lightings are focused on the wall, others on the other aspects, and they can be dimmed. That's the balcony. The corridor of that floor is associated with it, and the difference of the color temperature is visible here. I agree with the speaker of yesterday who said that the optimal color temperature for the museum is 4,000 Kelvin. Yes, we selected for all the halls exactly that temperature. For the corridors, warm color, 3,000 Kelvin. So it's noticeable here. You can see the contrast. What does it give us? First of all, these beautiful shots, and then it also gives us a possibility to get recharged, so to speak. A person can relax in the warm lighting. Now, as for the exposition lighting, I would like to mention here that this is the room of Richard Serra. His famous installation is to be outside, actually. But those who created the museum were afraid of vandalism. And so they built a huge hall and brought in the installation there. And then after that, they put up the walls. So that was a complex project, and the installation is going to be there forever. And now our idea was as follows here. We were thinking of lighting similar to what we could have outside, but without any blinding effect. We suggested different options, the imitation systems of natural light, but the customer was afraid of the word imitation. So we have a system of even lighting here. On the concept also envisaged the washing effect on the walls, and we decided not to use it in order to save some resources, but the option is open. No, it's also important to understand that the even lighting was not proper because we're afraid the installation would look like on a rainy day. Or, who wants to see a piece of rusty metal with a sensation that it's very dull outside as well. So we decided to create an impression of a sunny day. So apart from the reflection light from the sky on a sunny day, there is also a sensation that the direct and reflected rays have a different thermal effect. So, which is not so. So, in the center of the installation, we have those rays directed, and it's very important because people tend to go inside. Not everyone understands that this installation can be viewed from the inside, and then it also creates an impression of sunny weather. The mosaic of Fernand a famous master of the mid-20th century, with the first group of light resistance, and it is located in the Street of Arts. And we decided to use neutral white color, 4,000 Kelvin, although the street itself has 3,000 Kelvin. It was not that easy to make sure that the neutral color does not go beyond the limits of that mosaic. And so as a result, we have this rather interesting effect. If you look at it from the side, at an angle, you will see the following. At the side facets, it's possible only at this angle, you can find warm glints, and this creates an impression of an extra volume. Then the permanent exposition. There's a room dedicated to the Kazakhstan artists of different periods of time and contemporary artists, of course, among others. Here we created a sort of a classical triad of lighting fixtures. The first layer, this is the flooding or the wall washing effect, creating the background and creating the impression of any piece that is placed on the wall. The visibility effect is there. Then secondly, there are the contour light fixtures, which set out the perimeter of the painting clearly. Nikolai demonstrated that using the example. Indeed, it's quite easy. When you use the contour light fixture without the background, there is an impression of the light box. We don't want this. That's why we have to work on the background. The background and the accent have the same color temperature. Considering the height of the hall, 12 meters, over 12 meters, not exactly here, but in other halls as well, we had to overlay several layers. And using these several layers, it's important not to avoid creation of different layers of shades and shadows, so to avoid this rather strange effect. And then the focusing, the accenting lighting for sculptures used for the most part. And we felt very free here. We played with different shades and look at the light artifacts out there on the floor.
You might think that that was an artistic concept or device. No, it's the representation of the exchange of or changing the equipment. That way, the edge is diluted. It's very small light effect on the edge. Less expensive, less costly equipment replaced more sophisticated ones. So there is no effect like that. So the specialist he was fine-tuning this lighting. He avoids the very clear edge because this equipment, it could be some aberrations on the edges. So we can see the outlet of this light. Laymen like it. It's very appealing. They say it looks cool, but this is not good as well. This very high pole, 18 meters is the height of this hole. It was very difficult to illuminate it. The other day, we were looking at small, rather miniature pieces of equipment. To have the illumination of a huge and very tall hall, we need lots of them. So it all started from 50 watt here, and sometimes we had to have several layers of them. There are many layers here as well. It's a lone exhibition here, so we were supposed to create a universal system of illumination with lighting fixtures of all different types. There is a group of frames there which was envisaged to be used for labeling. Sorry, MacArthur Hall, this hall is dedicated to one installation. He doesn't like to call it a picture. He says it's an installation, very interesting canvas. We wanted to ask the author which would be the group of light resistance, light robustness here. It was the third group of light fidelity because it's not just oil canvas. They use burnt paper, burnt different materials which are wrapped to be degraded by light. So you can see the lighting of the canvas. There are spotlights which are always behind the back of the spectator, so no side effects. So what was very important? It was very important to look through very carefully, to look through the terms of reference. The other day I mentioned that we had 2 meetings, 2 conferences with the authors, with the design. So we had to discuss it in great detail. It was very important to take into account the artist's opinion. This canvas looks like it's illuminated even without light. It should look like it's luminescent. So the lighting fixture was not supposed to distort the distribution of natural brightness and natural luminance of the of the canvas. And this is a multimedia hall. So our task was to create a buffer zone here, which could immerse viewers gradually into that very low luminance. This is the whole uh, very famous Japanese contemporary paint. There is the zone of expectation here. Next time when you visit the Museum of Contemporary Arts, before being entered into this installation, you'll have to wait. You'll have to stay on in the buffer zone to get adapted and adjusted for some interim luminance. Media Hall is a multifunctional venue for lectures and performances. These are the pictures from the performances at the gala opening of the exhibition. Our goal was to create the system of stage lighting, like scenic lighting, and this is used in theaters, on stage. Aside this, there is a common conventional lighting here at the hall. I would like to mention our concerns as well, because unfortunately this concept was not implemented up to 100% because it was made on analogs of the main equipment. We never say that the replacement for replacement could be at par with the original idea. Those reside aberrations I hear, but when we pay more for more sophisticated equipment, it doesn't create aberrations on the edges at all. And there was the replacement of a lighting fixture by a cheaper one, and sometimes, of course, there is the degradation of a picture. Some of the LEDs are failing. They are out of order in this hall. They don't work for this situation. So projecting lighting looks very cool, but if you take a good look at it,
проекция.
you'll see that the projectors are slightly wobbling, and as to full control of that illumination. The other day we were talking to one of the specialists with the installment of lighting fixtures, and he said that this equipment, when it's cheaper, is less functional here. This concept is not implemented up to 100% yet, but we have other concerns of ours. But we are hopeful yet that all the other lighting effects will be implemented and the museum will enjoy the illumination which was supposed to be there. When the museum outsources specialists, it's always left for the discretion of the museum, but at least it should be done in the presence of the authors of the concept, because I reiterate, a team of 15 people worked for 2 years over this project. It's like our child, you know. This is the set of contacts of our School of Design as well, and there is a part of art of illumination and museums. The project, one of the projects is the imitation and simulation of daylight. I'm the president of this Association of Light Designers. You can also get engaged with us and develop our profession further. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for your presentation. Are there any questions? Yes, there are. You need the microphone. Thank you very much, Sergey, for your presentation. Notwithstanding the problem you enumerated quite candidly, it was well done. As to the question about color rendering and color fidelity, no one mentioned the standard about it, which means that we are advancing toward the new technology. But you know, the standard of color fidelity was introduced 18 months ago. It should be a state rule. Well, I might say that as we worked initially with the concept of the project of using European manufacturers, we use TM30 standard, which envisages more complex assessment of methods of color fidelity and color rendering index. Russian manufacturers are not yet ready to certify their equipment based on more complex and sophisticated standard, whereas designers are aware of TM30 standard, which has been around since long way back. In North America, it's recognized, and Great Britain, Europe, it's been in use out there. So we were referring to TM30 standard of color fidelity in our project. Another question. Good afternoon, Sergey. Uh, uh, maybe you were supposed to train the local personnel when the exhibition is over. Did you train the local personnel to work with the lighting fixtures? Yes, typically one will exercise the function of author's supervision will also include this service into instructions and editorials for maintenance groups as well. Whenever it's necessary, we conduct the training, formal training. Unfortunately, at that time, as the customer decided to replace the equipment, so mostly we were communicating back and forth with the contractor, mounting the equipment, some other issues. And they addressed us only when they had some big problems. So unfortunately, we didn't have a single chance to discuss the training, and we didn't really exercise full-fledged authors supervision. So I only once acted in this function because they replaced the equipment. Yeah. So I don't know what happens next. But well, no hard feelings. I will not take this question, but there are some peculiarities and mental perceptions of certain things in Kazakhstan. Sergey, thank you very much. Very interesting project. To the problems when the customer makes a decision to have the equipment replaced. How are you going to protect that equipment of yours, which you sort of add into the project? And do you participate in the selection of other manufacturers by other similar brand? Thank you very much for your question. I would like to sort of rebuke European manufacturers, even very good, cool ones, European and Russian as well, by the way, who don't know how to compete versus Chinese ones in one very simple thing. Why did the customer opted for Chinese equipment? It's not just only about the price. People making the decision visited factory in Germany, showroom in Austria, visited best museums of the world, and they saw that equipment we offered, which was there. But when it comes to simulation as well, ERC sent over the commercial offer, they put offer for equipment of the for the purchase of the equipment, for the procurement, a Chinese company most anxious to sell. They brought over a full rail car of those lighting fixtures and lots of Chinese specials, and they made a show. They said all the museum will be covered by our lighting fixtures. We'll do everything. So, to my way of thinking, even the leading brands offer very good equipment. Unless they learn how to compete versus Chinese companies, they don't have a single chance. As whether we do render the service of selection, we always make a clear stand for the customer. If you're going to replace the equipment, turn to us for advice, because if you just think that you're going to buy another equipment someplace else and the company would not make any money on that. Of course, this is very naive, because each and every company is thinking about their revenues. They will have the markup on the price. So we can offer other selection of the equipment because we're not going just to sell, but to do everything right. But unfortunately, this is the problem, which is typical for all the segments of the market of illumination. For some reason, oftentimes customers trust more subcontractors, mounting organization than designers, maybe because they're sitting next door, and maybe they are having the same lunch boxes and meet over coffee next door, if they're next door, until we turn around the situation, unless we bring it home to our customers that they should become aware that high professionalism of specialists who are engaged in lighting design is trustworthy, and the task of our professional community is about confirming and reconfirming it. We should be candid and outspoken, not just to boast and brag that everything is very fancy with us, but to tell about problems as well. Thank you. Any more questions? Thank you very much. That's it. Next presentation, architecture of light in exhibition.
So, Valeria Garipova, light designer, founder of Bureau View, The View. Good morning, everybody. Right. So today we'll speak about the architecture of light in an exposition. I decided to rephrase the topic in order to focus on the importance of the space of the exposition. Here is Valeria Garelova. We specialize on commercial projects at the cultural sites, and we work quite often with different public museums, galleries, and commercial galleries, among others. Allow me to say that in 2024, we looked at the work with showcases. We spoke about the difficulties, about the possibilities of the effective demonstration of artifacts without interfering with perception. Today, we will move away from that focus. We'll speak about the what surrounds a showcase. It was interesting for me to discuss in detail every single word here. And I would like to mention that when we take light, I like the definition, it's the light of knowledge, aesthetic and visual importance of the creation of atmosphere. The exposition, it was a discovery for me that exposition is also called the initial part of a piece of work, which acquaints us with the time, action, and the characters. So it's an education, aesthetics, structure. So working with the light in exposition, we make visible the space, the structure through the materials, through light, enlightening people. Well, so why is that important? Today, we of course know that people suffer from the lack of attention because we have the cognitive overload with information, too much content, news that is not always nice. And so as a result, we have the clip way of thinking. So that means when we work with any sort of space, we need to focus it and to stay in tonus. So we cannot possibly ignore it. We can moving towards the concentration of attention of the visitor. We need to create an effective image, aesthetics, emotional response, and aftertaste and memories. And why is that so important? It's important to immerse people in that and create an impression and a memory that he will or she will share with other people. And so it's not going to be a direct marketing or advertising of a project. So how do we build our dialogue with the visitor? Through the architectural form, from the light spots, symbolism, and images. And I'm talking not only about the work of the light designer, but about the collaboration of the architect and the light designer in this project on the basis of the concept that is provided to us by the museum, by the curator. And our instruments, the instruments of the designer, first of all, associated with the light and shade pattern. Let's start with this example from cinematography for us to be embedded into the topic I'm going to speak about. We can see two similar shots spectrum. So by the light correction, these are similar. But when the story is about a house, about a fortress, and about relaxation, we can see here in this shot the entrance into the room and the floor lamps within the space scattered around. If we talk about the real premises, we won't have that many sconces or floor lamps, but there is this amplification following. But if we take about something technical, then in the second shot, we can see that this channel is being lit with the even intensity, and there is nothing live here. So unconsciously, the operator, the artist sets in a certain idea into that. Well, of course, the context, the textures, and the composition are very important here within that frame, but we also have to consider the location of the light spots and their combination. So what should we pay attention to? What are the methods we can use in order to manage the attention of our visitors? I decided to speak about several categories here, and most often we speak about statics. So when we accept and we perceive a light spot as a geometric shape or line, then horizontal line is land, surface, it's gentle, it's movement towards something, and then there is a stop. The vertical line, that's power, strength, hierarchy, age, status, or the fatal fall, and then rise, depending on the context of the exhibition. You will be able to understand that. Here are examples. The first example is the panorama of Copenhagen. Yeah, and there is the nuances to it, the tone of the city and the sky. You can see the dominant element here, and you can see the view here, which emphasizes the geometry and at the same time provides us with an understanding of how this space is built. If the person stands and just looks at the city. The other museum is the art museum, and the portal within the museum with the light at the lower level, at the level of horizon, supports the columns and makes them somewhat lighter to make sure that they're not that heavy. But the portal, the light on the columns, provides us with a feeling of stability and monumentality. Here is an example of a project implemented. I want to talk about the lighting on the exhibits. When first of all, we think that we just need to focus the light spot on it, but it's not really so. The environment within the artifact is very important. We spoke about that in 2024, and when we perceive the showcase as a part of the whole, then the filling in of the showcase is most important. It's part of the architecture. So we're talking about the artifact. It's an icon in this case, and it's a large icon. And here it was important for us to fill in not only the showcase itself, but also add some light from down below in order to create a support for this showcase. Since the arches are in the windows and where they repeat each other, so this hall has a rhythm, stable rhythm. The stable rhythm, which actually supports the space. Another approach, which is not that obvious, when we finish the work on the exposition, we realize that the central element it's quite large and heavy, because in every cube there were 4 showcases, large ones, with a lot of artifacts, and sometimes with just one. But anyway, since this volume was decorated with a material that actually was very similar to the outer space, and then we also had a lit dome to add some air into this hall, we realized that if we do not have light support next to these cubes, there will be a sensation of them being dissolved. And so this accent provided us with a good reflex on the materials around, and so we were able to create this extra support. That's what it looks like at close range. Now, how can we use statics plus to that? We can fill the volume of the showcase with it. We can wash the walls with text, with information, and light boxes. And another example, Russian historical portraits in the Mikhailovsky Castle. Now here it was important in the oval hall to focus attention on the central portrait. And when we filled in with space this shape with the portrait, we thought that this large portrait felt uncomfortable there, was not enough space. We added more light behind these profiles, and this extra light made it possible to expand the space, to add the visual weight to the structure. And thus we made this whole composition more solid, emphasizing the dynamics of the overhaul. Now, another variant with statics, but more gentle, because it's at the end of the room with sort of soft corners and edges, and not clear-cut light boxes, but sort of this composition is symmetric. We can see that within it there is already power and structure, so we make it stronger without adding too much of that, and we softening it, pulling it up, so we can create a structure, we can focus attention, but at the same time you can do it with the help of a frame, with a spotlight, and with washing the walls. But if you prefer to focus attention on the portraits and other artifacts, then the edges of this light spot can be mitigated and made much more gentle. And here is another example, not from the museum sphere, but a very good illustration of how statics works in cathedrals and churches. Here we can see a portal, the Madeleine Church. So if we enter this heavy building, the focus is on the altar part, and these horizontal lines give us a sensation of a feeling of support, and this lit triangle is an extra support. Actually, the focus on the sculpture. Why is it perceived as a triangle? Because over here we can see there is an extra light coming from down below. This makes the composition complete. So here there is nothing here that would incline this composition. There is not too much light on the plafond. The horizontal line is obvious, but at the same time, this figure closer to us is better lit than what we can see in the back. Everything is well balanced. Another method can be used, and it's a dynamic navigational. If we talk about dynamic art, we can use it. If we can, we need to show where to go to the visitors. Here we use the rays, the light rays. They can be different. They can be with clear-cut boundaries, or they can be dissipating. So there is a certain character created. This penetration over here creates this effect of lightness and dissipation, but the materials are moving, the lines are not that clear cut, and they're leading us, and there were sliding lines as well here when we focus on the edge of the portal. And here is this sort of sliding, which is very soft, very gentle, adding nuances to the space. Now, here is another example of how we worked with the exhibition dedicated to Karl Brylov in Moscow. And we can see the initial concept when the color was focusing attention just on the paintings, but we cannot leave the exhibition like that, because the dark floor and the dark interior disorient the visitors, make them feel uncomfortable, uncertain. So we add the light box, which improves the space impression and gives motivation for movement. So as the point of perception is very important. We can create dynamics, but at the same time, we are actually taking the possibility to turn and look at the artifacts. There is a stability involved here. In this space, there is also a staircase, which you cannot see, but it is there. It's a ramp leading to the next floor. There are portraits on that next floor, and it's important that visitors go up there. One of the ideas was to hide the LED tape down there in such a way as to emphasize the dynamics. Why it was necessary so? Because the ramp itself was higher than the eye level, and it was not clear how to move there. And the wall was not tidy enough really to enlighten it. So that was an option. This could work. This could create a static exposition with certain dynamics demonstrating where to move next once you see the first room. The filling in of the space with light can also provide us with an extra context. Now it can reveal it, you can make it dense, or the character itself or the filling in can be the flooding light, but can be also quite artistic and spots and rays and destroying the architecture, but also introducing life into that. So here are the variants from cinematography. The first one is two dads film where the character thinks about the meaning of life, and there is the effect of filling in here. But when you talk about some metaphoric and philosophical topics, then the light goes up beyond the horizon level. But if we talk about a field or light during the sunny day, then of course filling in touches up not only the upper part, but also something much more applied. And the other example is with white closed eyes. So the character is accompanied with these garlands over there. The situation develops, the story develops before Christmas, and it demonstrates his inner doubts, dreams, and a wish to bring something bright into his life. And filling in the museum, that's when we give light a chance to fill in the space in an even way without adding anything, any accents and focuses. And this can be used when the rooms are filled with artifacts which are dedicated to one and the same theme. Let's say skulls or sculptures of one and the same period of time. So there is no wish for us to say, this is one period of time, that is a different period of time. So there's no focus here. We enable our visitor to see everything at the same time, everything that fills in the hall. Two very good examples, the Petit Palais in Paris and the Hermitage. And if we look at the Hermitage, we'll see that there is a chaotic hanging on the paintings on the wall. So it's live. If we focus attention just on the light accents and the exhibits here, the artifacts in the hall, then we will see that there is no attention paid to the architecture. But the skylight makes it possible to fill in the space and to see paintings of a certain period of time. At the same time, it emphasizes the architecture. In case of the Petit Palais in Paris, light is also upwards mostly because it's a passage. In fact, there is no need to stop here for a very long time. But we can see here the street sculpture. And when we walk around, we move on. So the focus is up there. So the architectural shape is emphasized here. The disintegration. This can be created through light spots or shades. And over the past half year, we carried out a number of projects using this approach a number of times, artistic projects, adding life into certain zones. For example, I think Chersonesus, the whole was filled in with floristic composition. And since the Peter's small palace is a classical building with columns with reliefs, and then we were to mention those traditions, their life and traditions, and we were to pull down to the pomposity. So at the entrance to the exhibition, the texture of time. So there were artifacts from painters here, from artists. We decided to emphasize this effect of the trees, of the flowers, and we decided to add more shades and shadows, telling the story of what was really important. The topic of the exhibition, the theme, was a combination of classical art and fabrics, the dyeing of pigments from India that became part of the global fashion. And the global fashion, that of course, a story of clothing, of different stories of our possibility of trying it on for ourselves. So through this sort of dissipation, we get an impulse leading us towards a dream. Some other approaches, the National Museum of the Sheikh in Abu Dhabi. I cannot show the exposition to you because there was always someone taking pictures there. It was such a beautiful place, and the idea is such a simple for the interactive tackling of the issue. So if we fill the space with screens and light boxes, we create a very similar effect of what we have here. It's not necessary to focus on the major context. The person has the right to choose what particular masks to look at or painting, this or that painting, this or that artifact, this or that meaning. So this is the effect created by this integration. And we're leaving our visitor with the possibility to choose whether he wants to go into each and every light box and every artifact. It just so refers to get a general idea and the essence of the epoch. And we all worked with the floral ornaments, which create an impact of a more expensive space. Contrast. Used practically at every exhibition. Here are some examples from practical life when we work with nuances. And here, if we have a large hall and we know that we have to attract our visitor into a certain space, we understand that the ceiling is clean and clear enough. We can add light up there. And that's visually, the person will be able to see that there is something interesting there and move towards there. But if we cannot do it, as if there is a projection with certain light falling on the ceiling, and it's not in the key zone, then it's better to somehow to avoid this particular projection. And this is a contrast between the color contrast and the light. Now, the examples of contrasts here, there are two examples here. So a symbol of the open storage for restoration, and we're providing light for the structure itself and for the elements of the facade with cold light. The exhibition was in ruins. So we wanted to emphasize the idea that it was the restoration, the building that was being restored. So we wanted to emphasize the idea that was a church, and we wanted to show the restored room, aesthetically restored rooms. So we created here this contrast of the warm and cold. Right, and here at the same exhibition, there was an installation which by its color temperature was very different from the exposition light. So they were white, but the installation was cold. And so there is effect of divine atmosphere. Another example of a contrast.
And when there is the temperature contrast, 3000 Kelvin, very cold, 4, 5, or 6, the accent is on the main sculpture, and add a small nuance, red, a color which creates the effect of vivacity and heat. All that grand architecture, Baroque, oversaturated architecture is being invested some vivacity into it. There could be a contrast and light with showcases. Oftentimes we imitate, but here we work with filling this with case with light. There are more accents added up here, which highlighted this key showcase in the framework of architecture and extra contracts, which adds up more vibe and atmosphere, and visual raises up the ceiling, the contrast of dark accents. When we focus the attention at a valuable thing, a treasure, just a jewelry or great very famous painters. When we work with a spot, we should know which instrument we should use. When we select the equipment, we accentuate the light spots. There are several good manufacturers in the market to work with the exhibition. In December, we will comparing the characteristics of equally accenting devices, and we noticed that some companies show a more clear edge, the other ones more blurred edge. So it depends on the exhibition, on the venue, this or that museum, whether we need very mild subsiding of this edge if the focus in the center and the edge has been sort of dissolving very mildly. When the artifacts are close to each other, very close, they will be differing with each other. So we select very narrow beam to have more clear edge to accentuate the object at a larger canvas or an artifact. So there could be another accent as well. It will work well. There are lots of examples when we have reiterating rhythms and a very clear edge as well, but there are some very mild gradients which are very helpful. In different museums, they use frame differently. There could be a soft frame. That's the Manesh exhibition. I don't like frames all too much. It's not a very good example. And here is the rigid hard frame. Sometimes the frame didn't have enough luminance, and some screens looked like TV screens and pretty color. It could be that way, but when frames were working with the paintings by Jack Ribera, close to classics, and those frames, they were sort of killing the volume. And at the exhibition of this year at Paris, and I saw that many pictures are illuminated by frames with very soft edge, and they avoid illumination around and around light beam, but they dilute the borders of this frame, so the light is more vivacious and pleasant to the eye. So we have got different needs, so we can use solar light, daylight, certain dimmers. It all depends on the goals of your exhibition, the distribution of all those devices in space, what we emphasize, how we make those objects interacting with each other. That's it. You may get familiarized with the portfolio of our team if you wish. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much. Very good presentation. Are there any questions? Thank you for your presentation. There is one thing you mentioned, I don't totally agree. In the first part of your presentation, you've shown sort of the way you manipulate the viewers. There was the exhibition dedicated to Cossacks. It was more fascinating. It was more interesting. I think that one should not treat visitors of the exhibitions as visitors of supermarkets. Supermarkets do manipulate the customers, the visitors, but this is a different thing, you know. It's the exhibition. When you showed it, Cossacks is good, and the other day there was a presentation which was of the exhibition called Svayasi, which could be equivalent to home, sweet home idea. And and what do you think about it? And also, you've shown lots of exhibitions and works with churches. And I think that sometimes you didn't take into account the church presentations about it. The way the clergy could interpret this. Which example specifically? The first one, which was commissioned, I think it was Maria Magdalena Cathedral. So as to the location of the images in the volume of the cathedral, and those light accents were sort of in Congress here, because cathedral, a church, is lit by candlesticks and church chandeliers, so the illumination was rather homogeneous and regular there. And if it's a large ancient cathedral, so please ask your question. As to manipulation of the viewers, well, I didn't mean that. I meant that when we work with exhibitions, at the stage of analysis, and so we speak with the curators and we figure out which space we have to work in, that space created by the architect or what, and what would support the context which is present there. It's more about the way we make architecture more visible and clearly understood, and we can lead our visitor, our viewer, accentuating his or her attention at certain artifacts. I wouldn't call it a manipulation of a viewer, or rather, it's rather enhancement of the senses which were invested into the project by curators and arrangers of the space. Anything else? Thank you very much for your presentation. So we are talking about optics, physics, and eye vision physiology. Human eye is very personal. The physiology of perceptions and psychological personal experience, or different moods and sentiments of people could be different. How about your vision? Do you get the feedback from the audience? Do you do the studies or surveys of the audience? On the whole, I agreed with your interpretation of verticals, horizontals, and so on, but some could other perceptions as well. But manipulation, it's just people are different. For some, very high level of lighting is good, and when people get into the space of backlighting and certain accents, they're not accustomed to that, or sometimes the space is very limited and there are several layers of senses, exhibition spaces, and the viewer don't see why it was done. First, he had lots of light, then he gets into a dim room, for example, or sometimes there are mixtures of artifacts with different light resistivity. Visitors don't always perceive that in the right way. Sometimes they don't understand it. Do you do the survey based on the feedback of the visitors? Some dislike it when the room is dimmed. We don't do such research, such studies. We are browsing through the research done someone else. For younger audience, the darker it is, the more comfortable they feel. It's age group up to 25 years old. Older audiences don't like dimmed spaces. This is a big problem. Unfortunately, if we work with parchments or fabrics, there are very stringent rules for illumination. And when we work with artifacts like that, and we would like to highlight and the attention. So we do the contrast between the dark and the light space. That way, that dark space is the sort of buffer between different degrees of illumination. But we should work with architects, with the light designers, and with curators about that, whether we're allowed to do that in this or that space. We do not conduct studies and research, but we are observing the way visitors behave in this space, how they start moving, where they stop, where they hold on longer. And let's see, in the Kremlin exhibitions or where else, and sometimes we place the inscriptions inside the window uh, cases, the showcases, and I was glad to see how rather elderly people, bespectacled people, get very close to those inscription labels, and they read it out, how long the people stand next to an artifact. So sometimes people avoid deemed spaces if they skip those places. I think that we did something not quite right for the exhibition. Thank you. Next speaker, Alfia Davidkovskaya, Light Design Bureau, Culture of Light. Dear colleagues, good afternoon. I'm Tisha Bukovskaya. I'm a partner and lead light designer of Culture of Light bureaus. We developed the concepts for illumination. We've got lots of very interesting implemented projects already, like the exhibition at Tsaritsino, the splendor of Russian costume. Then we do the interior illumination of public spaces like bookstore, Singer Company on Nevsky. There are some premises for lectures, so it was architectural illumination inside this space and many other sites as well. But today it's about something else I'm going to tell you about. It's industrial park Shukhov at Viksa town, Nizhny Novgorod region. That is the historic center of Viksa town. It consists of three parts: the embankment, the esplanade, recreational and sports area, and there is museum, historical part of the town. And the most interesting part of it is being erected at the place of the former cast iron production factory. Metallurgy was born there. Metallurgy of entire Russia. That cast iron factory was functioning. Then it was turned into brown field, but then it was reopened for manufacturing of certain other things. And this is the park, industrial park, and the former cast iron factory is also sponsoring some of the renovations here. This park is very interesting. It's the museum historical part, and it's also very interesting because those artifacts broke through, so to put it. They are outside, outdoors, not indoors now, so we can get familiarized with the history of that part of the city, of the factory, of the museum, and so on. And now work, we embarked upon comprehensive approaches. We had to unify different parts of the park into one concept. The architects of the studio are 44. They suggested the very essence of this factory. It's like a temple of metal. It's very interesting. So you can see those pipes and tubes because it's the form of metallurgic production. The concept of illumination here was supposed to convey the very essence, the most important ideas of production of metal, rolled metal, cast iron, and so on. So it all emanated from the architects themselves. Our task was to carry through with that story, to develop it, and to think about different scenarios of lighting and illumination, not just architectural or landscaping illumination, but the illumination of the exhibition per se. And so we decided that the light going from underneath the world, the earth supports this idea of a huge smelt, huge metal object like metallurgic factory. And all these spaces centered around the architectural illumination of the museum, and we discussed a lot of things with the architects, and we were toured around the production. We saw how it's all done. And so we decided to use red light, red color to illuminate that as well, because it's metallurgic production, it smelts and kilns.
We also provided light to the area in general, so we brought all this together, and we had different scenarios for different seasons, because perception is different. In summertime, for example, the architectural lighting is warm, and it gradually moves towards the neutrality, and in the winter it's the other way around. And it's not only the melting of metal that we followed here, but we were impressed after visiting the plant, the metal works, with the sunset. And all this made us build a very special image. We realized that the light combinations were correct and the color combinations were correct, and our customer liked the idea and supported us in that. And so our scenario is called the sunset. So why the sunset? Why do we have a museum here? Because that is the first thing we can see entering the park. We invite a person, we invite a visitor. Of course, the visitor can go inside, but the visitor can also walk around the museum where the exterior exposition is displayed. And time is very conventional here because the whole system of lighting here is dependent on sunset and sunrise. And in the summertime, we have warm red color and light. And in winter, when it is darker at 4 p.m., we have neutral lighting. But at 6, we have the performance started with the change of the color temperature and illumination. So 6 p.m., this is the time selected for us. Why is that so? Because it's well, there's a metalworking facility, and most of the workers are there till 5 p.m. The town is quite active. We visited it at different seasons, and we know that residents spend a lot of time outside, and particularly here, which is in the very center. And 6 o'clock, we decided that is the time where we would have the warm light on symbolizing warm and hearth, and in the winter time in particular, because it's cold. So that's what we can see, and the visitors can enjoy. So the main character here is the furnace, the theater of the furnace. Why is that so? You probably do not know why we call it theater. We were not sure about the name at all when we began to work on the project, but here there are the exhibits demonstrating the technological process of metal melting by steps, extraction of iron and the production of oil, pig oil, sorry, not oil, of course, but steel and pig iron. The red color here symbolizes the hot metal, heating of the metal. So this scenario is a relatively short time. It's a performance that is going to be on several times every night, and at the weekend, probably even more times. And then the temperature goes down and the light goes down, the intensity goes down, meaning the cooling off of the metal. And then visitors go to the park. But the park itself contains not only the elements of the metal melting, but also different other things, like Shukhov Tower, built during the reorganization of the facility with the participation of Shukhov. So this is a cultural site and cultural heritage site, one of the three original towers built ambitiously. And so it was transferred from the park, from the territory of the plant to the park, restored, reassembled, and 90% of the metal has been preserved here. The metal is of that time. Now here, no, I wanted to say also that a person being in the park can feel differently depending on the light, on the lighting, on the artifacts around. And so it's possible to have different impressions. It's not static at the visit to the park at all. So at the Shukhov Tower, the area is full of different events. There are concerts, different events planned for this area, so there is a lot of light here. Different methods are being used: architectural lighting, decorative lighting, and well, of course, everything is on here in this particular photo. But generally speaking, we can say that there is a variation possible. Here is the exposition around the museum. From the other side, we walk around the museum. There is dense space indeed. There's a dimmed functional lighting, but there's no sensation of darkness because there are vertically lit columns here on the exposition. And light here leads us to certain artifacts and makes us move further. But as for the extra possibilities, we use state-of-the-art light fixtures that can be easily controlled, and that was the wish of the customer. They said they wanted to make sure that this Shukhov trace works for us in different hypostases when we can see its architectural beauty, but we also are able to switch off all the devices. They thought that was important. At the time of the concerts, for example, we create a sort of an intimate atmosphere, comfortable atmosphere, in order to be able to see what's happening on the stage. Now here is the picture of the opening of the Shukhov Tower. In autumn 2025, it took its place in the park. There was a solemn ceremony and the light show. And, well, of course, it just reflects the idea that is there in the concept. Well, of course, it's not going to be that brilliant, that bright and red, always. So it's just a show, but we're already working on the lighting systems. We will go there for the commissioning. And so the lighting is going to be more focused, emphasizing the Shukhov structure. And around this part of the park, the construction period begins, and the construction is started. Several locations will be open. So for the time of the art festival, it will be open, and it will be possible to see the street exposition and the furnace theater and the furnaces of the Batashov's period of time. And there we work on temporary lighting, which reflects the ideas embedded. And we hope very much that it works, because the goal of ours is quite complex, and it's far from being trivial. Everything in there is going to be quite interesting, and we want to have a proper light on everything, but safe at the same time. Finally, I would like to say that light here in this area goes beyond the lighting function. Here, it pulls everything into a composition, focuses attention on the most important things, but at the same time, bringing everything together, uniting everything. And light here is an emotional link for the residents here. And we hope that this is another point of attraction, not only for the residents of the city, but also for visitors of the Viksa town, which is not that well known at all, but becomes popular because of the festival they have there, but also because of the solutions that we suggest. Well, thank you. That's it. I will be happy to answer your questions if there are any. Right, you're welcome. Right. Sergey. Yeah. Well, thank you for the discussion of the concept. I have several questions. My first question is about the temporary work of this museum facility. Now, how many people are going to see this lighting? If the museum works just till 6 p.m., then it's just in the wintertime that this is all visible. The second question is false. Most of the lighting methods are from down upwards, and so there is a lot of pollution coming in, a sort of noise. So some people might think that there's too light and they can saw their stars and their favorite birds. The residents might complain, and then of course the maintenance service should be also considered here. All the light fixtures built into the ground. How do we maintain those? How is it going to work for a certain period of time? No, it's an expected question indeed. We are also on the side of very careful attitude to nature and to lighting. But here, our goal was, how to put it, to create an image, metal brutality, metal melting, and casting. So there were no other methods that helped us do it. As for maintenance, now, and of course, the manufacturer of our equipment works with us. These are very special items, particularly for columns. That's a proper assembly work. With a proper assembly and mounting work, we can actually extend the life of the light fixtures over several years. And of course, we're all interested in very careful treatment of the light fixtures, because the customer likes this area in general, not because we work there, but actually referring to it as the temple of metal. And so I think it's something that can be resolved. Well, we don't want to say that this is something to be used everywhere. This particular approach is to be used everywhere, but that's the way we work here. Yes, as for the our museum hours, yes. Now, this is something that is being discussed with the customer, but according to the information coming from the customer, it's going to be open till 9 p.m. But in the summertime, there is a lot of visitors coming, and it's not necessary to go inside. There is a park outside, and so it's possible to attract visitors like that. They can enjoy the park at nighttime, and then during the daytime, go to the museum and have a look at the history of the metalworking. Technical information. Participants of the expert commission on standardization, the interregional group, are meeting shortly. Now, will you please join me? We will have a session through Zoom. Yeah, right. Yeah. A question. Metal has its own properties and can be of different color. When being very hot, it's red. When we have a piece in metal, then the structure is different, the color is different. I cannot imagine the Shukhov Tower in a warm color, because the architects, I think, always want to show the sheen of metal. And I would rather think of a different story. The tower should be in cold light, I think. And in Yopro, the culture of light, we carried out some work on the colored lighting, and this demonstrates that a lot of people react with anxiety to the red color. Have you considered that? Well, thank you for your question. Yes, that's an interesting question. Yes, well, as for metal, well, of course, we are in the context here. We understand, of course, that metal changes color, but here in this park, the Shukhov Tower doesn't have the color of metal, but rather dark color. It's painted, restored in such a way that the structure itself is dark. So we didn't want to use cold light on it. That's why it's warm. There is not going to be any brilliant lighting there. We won't be able to see with that lighting the sort of open work there. But during the daytime, it will be possible to do it. As for the red color, this is a scenario. It is not dynamic. It is not going to be that brilliant, changing different shades of red, but it will be part of nature and it will be changeable. So, of course, we have a system of control here. And on the site, we will be able to see how it works in reality. Well, of course, we stand for testing that in real life, testing our solutions. And the museum is going to be of raw metal, so it's going to be rusty with time. So that's turning naturally into a big rusty furnace. So we'll see how it works. We're at the stage of implementation, work on the documents, of course, together with everyone else. And so it's a process. We just hope that visitors feel comfortable there. Yes, colleagues. No, we're, yes, off time limits. So if there are some more questions, you will be able to ask them during the break later. Thank you. Right. Now we'll change the order of presentations. Our next speaker is Alexei Solovyov, Doctor of Technical Science, Professor of the Chair of Architecture and Civil Engineering for the environment of the Moscow Civil Engineering Institute, and Kirill Solovyov, the candidate of culturology. They will speak about the lighting of museum and exhibition premises and problems and solutions. Dear colleagues, good afternoon. Now, the presentations of today are most interesting and are very much needed for the museum sphere, but they were all dedicated to design. Design, which is the basis for the creation of lighting within the museums. I would like to speak about some technical matters. Well, the matter is that the lighting of museum premises contains a lot of sub issues. And there is a lot of technical matters that are to be considered when we organize lighting and when we design lighting. Now, the needed lighting atmosphere is associated not only with our impressions, but also with human physiology, with the sensation of the sufficiency or insufficiency of light on the premises. Then it's also important to emphasize the importance of the artifacts, ideal color transfer and rendering. That's a must for the exhibitions, and safety, consideration of all the general matters associated with comfortable light environment. So what is safety in this sense? That's not only the sensation of safety on the premises for those who come and visit. In order to get acquainted with the exhibition, with the artifacts. But it's also necessary to consider the safety and security matters for the artifacts associated with everything that is needed for safeguarding of the artifacts. And finally, we need to think about the perception of flat or three-dimensional items. It's one thing if we look at paintings, but if we look at the exhibition showcases with different other type of artifacts, let's say it's a different story. Let's say, how to put it, if we look at the artistic items located horizontally, if we look at the artistic miniatures which are horizontally displayed in the showcases, that's a different story.
Thing is that those errors which could be made along all of those directions reduce the amount of visitors getting to the exhibitions and damage of valuable objects. So we need creating a very special light environment. We should, and of course, there are different design elements which should be used, and we should be thinking about the most ideal color fidelity. And also, there should be safety and security. We should adhere to all the requirements for comfortable environment for visitors and to create the right perceptions of the visitors about different 3D objects. I have got a co-author of this presentation as well, and also I was assisted by assistant professor of our university, Kirill Solovyov. Which factors are related to the peculiar attributes of different exhibitions and premises? First of all, we should take into account the size of the premises, the sizes of exhibition room, and when there are different exhibitions in one and the same premise. In large premises, large rooms, it's often the case that the change of exhibition in one and the same room, which could be the case not just in loan exhibitions, but there could be some changes and alterations made and constant exhibitions done. The location of exhibitions along the walls and in showcases, the free location of the artifacts and the rooms per se, where they are located, the peculiar characteristics of the buildings and their effect upon the illumination is a very important issue as well. Just by one example, Pagankin Chambers in Pskov, there is a museum space in there, or rather several museum spaces, and they should be embedded into a monument of architecture, which is not supposed to be changed from the standpoint of architecture, and by the same token from the standpoint of the interiors. So it's absolutely necessary to take account of those peculiarities, peculiar attributes of those buildings. Typically, they've got tiny windows and very thick walls with a slope, which create some implications in the sphere of daylight, and rather contemporary sites having daylight or the upper portion of the premises via lanterns, like in Pushkin Museum or Museum of the Fine Arts. And there are different examples of that. I already mentioned that contemporary museums are rather different from the standpoint of arranging the illumination. Contemporary buildings of the museums are typical in the way that, in most part, they are using just one artificial illumination, like in the new museum opened in New Jerusalem. And daylight in the buildings, which are the architectural monuments, like the picture on the bottom is the architectural monument, which is indicative of the fact that there should be a combination of daylight and artificial illumination when there is a mixture of lighting in the museums. This should be studied more. And contemporary building picture gallery, let's say no building of Tretyakov Gallery on Crimea Wall. It has got large premises which are devoid of daylight. This is the combination of artificial and daylight, which provides us with great opportunities. We should take account of that. Contemporary building, this gallery on Krimsky Wall, there are huge premises with very large openings. We should take them into account. And inside, there are some premises not having daylight seeping through at all, and they are illuminated by the imitation or simulation of a daylight. Looks like it's an illumination via lanterns, stained glass, and one artificial source of artificial illumination in the central part here. it's necessary to support necessary levels of luminance, the artifacts and the pictures. This is one of the aspects. It's physical one. It could be assessed by different devices. Then we should create the right perception and impression about the room, the premises, when it comes to its saturation by daylight and artificial light, depending on the installation, on the exhibition. And people, visitors who come along to such a museum, they stay on for a long time period, and this big amount of time makes an impact upon the requirements people have. And now these requirements are being studied, and we are part of that study, one of those at least, but not for museum premises, unfortunately. Same goes for spatial characteristics of light field which is surrounding us, so we can arrange the right perceptions of the objects of observation depending on what kind of object is that. Spatial characteristics of light field are about those physical parameters which enable us to ration and regulate illumination, not just for industrial buildings or public areas or residential buildings as well, but by the same token, those characteristics are equally important for museum illuminations, especially for 3D objects, 3D artifacts, and these museum premises from the standpoint of light field surrounding the artifacts are understudied severely, I would say. That way, there is a plethora of different objects for observation. They have got different characteristics of light field. Light field has got different and diverse characteristics which could be measured and assessed. And unfortunately, there is just a handful of specialists doing that. Flat objects, pictures, vertical illumination is very important there when we deal with pictures. But if pictures are protected by glass, there could be glares interfering into the observation and impairing it. Or specular reflections, and there are some spatial characteristics, spherical illumination, semi-spherical illumination, and so on. Flat artifacts in showcases, horizontal illumination. It could be measured, it could be calculated and estimated. With the help of devices called lux meters, we've got plentiful of such devices. As to voluminous 3D artifacts in showcases or in sculpture halls, spherical illumination is very important for them, semi-spherical illumination as well. And the proportion between the light vector and both characteristics is very important. That creates the ability to ration and adjust the illumination for the sake of assessment and estimation and for setting up the right direction for the light vector. It's vertical or horizontal. angle of light vector, for that matter, they could be measured as well. And at last, the general impression about the building, which is very important when visitors are staying there for a long time. It's a medium cylindrical illumination. Such characteristics are quite enabling for creation of some kind of impartial and unbiased opinion and recommendation, and maybe methodological guidebooks for illumination and luminance in the premises of the museums. Of course, they should be related to the design and to the artifacts per se. The theory of light field back in the 1920s of the 20th century, that theory was created by Russian scientist, Soviet scientist Gershon. He developed different characteristics of the light field with different colors and different characteristics which could be measured. They are measurable via luxometers and via a set of devices measuring spatial characteristics of the field. You can see this device on the right-hand side of the slide. It's used for measurement of spatial illumination, median spherical illumination. This is the measurement of cylindrical illumination or semi-spherical illumination, or it could be semi-cylindrical illumination and so on. These sets of devices are not manufactured in our country, most deplorable. They are certified in Europe. In Germany, for one, they manufacture such devices by Krogman Company. This company was created by Professor Krogman himself. At one point, he used to lecture at the Technical University of Berlin, Western Berlin. So we were applying the theory of light field to what we did. The change of norms of horizontal and longitudinal lighting of the light field are related to psychological, physical methods of evaluation of illumination. And it seems to me altogether that in Russia, study is done with the application of the theory of light field are quite promising when done. For different artifacts, different objects, different capacities, different options for illumination. There are studies of spatial characteristics of the light field done in 20th century, in the mid-century and before. It was the theory of light field in museums and in outdoor sculptures as well. Also, Fred Hager also did those studies in 20th century, but later on, like in 1970s, Hager didn't finish his studies that were dedicated to the halls of sculpture, to outdoor sculptures, and at last the application of psychological physical methods. Those psychological physical methods were really applied at different points in time. This is the assessment for the structure of light nuclei, for holes of sculpture. It's about the application of spatial characteristics assessment, and also outdoor sculptures, vestibules and lobbies of the buildings as necessary to embark upon the creation of a sequence of norms and methodological bylaws for different types of illumination, for different premises. This is just a request or an advice, no more than that. But I think that finally we'll have this in place. Thank you. Thank you. Questions? No questions. Thank you very much. There are some changes in our agenda. There will be one more speaker prior to lunch. And at 2 o'clock, there will be a workshop, a master class. And we are just slightly behind the agenda. Next will be Anna Ilchuk, methodology of calculations of museum illumination. Anna Ilchuk, technical department, Airlight.
Dear colleagues, I'm Anna, I'm a engineer from Almaty. Could you use the microphone?
И предыдущий докладчик говорили о идеальной цветопередаче, о примере.
Could we ask the speaker to use the microphone, to speak into the microphone?
Давайте расскажу. Меня хорошо без микрофона слышно? Не слышно, да? Так, еще раз. Раз. Хорошо. Коллеги, еще раз обозначу, что...
The company Allied is using its projects, the known approaches. The museum lighting nowadays exists on the basis of regulating documents, standards to regulate the light transfer, UGR, and radiation. And I will focus on these parameters. So we need to think about the balance between the conservation, preservation, and perception, because we need to render the idea of the author and maintain the safety of the item. So there are norms, there are standards that regulate CIE. So it has already been mentioned that since November 2024, we have been working within a framework of a document which regulates the method of the index of the accuracy of the color transfer. There is also the recommendations of the International Commission concerning the transition to M30. But we all understand that the topical documents nowadays regulate CRI, and so they are recommended as CRI and M30. So a few words. What is regulated now? The traditional methods of color transfer follow eight positions. 100 is ideal, and this is the number which is based on the basis of 8 pastel shades, and R9, and many of the designers come across it. That is the red color that is difficult to render, is not a part of that. So we can see a light fixture with a CRI over 95, that's absolutely impossible to achieve that. So there is TM30 with two criteria of assessment, the accuracy and the intensity indices. We'll talk about the accuracy. So this is again a CRI, but CRI has 8 positions and TM3 has 99 markers. So where the colors are different, the pastel, intense, and so on. The index of intensity is not a topic for us today because there are no regulations yet, and it does not contain that information for the final user. So what is the problem? The manufacturer says CRI over something. Let's say even if with high CRI, with the light fixtures, I think that's so. Two with the same CRI, but they're very different from the point of view of the parameters and samples of color. There's a spectral fallouts, and CRI can be high, but the red color can fail, and so on. So I would also like to mention one other thing with the use of Matisse painting, the Red Room, where the author was thinking about the colors playing with each other, yellow, red, and blue. And if one of these colors fails, then in color rendering, then the idea fails. And so the practical use of the TM3 method proves that. We really have to have the analogy of with the square by Malevich, when the color kills everything around. So if you don't use the proper light, then it's just a black square. If with proper lighting, you can see the brush strokes, you can see how much labor there is in that painting. About the spectral fallouts, we also have the regulating standard that regulates the measure, the correlating of the temperature and the color transfer along the axis. There are 8 pastel colors, but they also measure the color transfer in one point. With all of that, the light fixture, they can be different. They can be different. They can be downlight, let's say. They can be upper lighting, so on. So quite often, there are different fittings used, different accessories being used, which also use the spectral composition. And this is not regulated. So all the information that is here is just along the axis. So how can we resolve this particular problem? In our company, we have the Goniospector radiometer, which provides us information on TM30, but also selects the average meaning for the color transfer all over the photometric body. We think this is not enough. This is average. And so here are examples of one of the light fixtures. We carry out analysis for each and every angle. So with the help of this instrument, it's possible to get information concerning the spectrum and check this information at the angles to check the index of accuracy. And CRI can be compared with delta V with the different color temperatures using the example of one of the fixtures, which was able to see the deviation, and the index accuracy also was deviated. So on the site, we won't have CRI over 95. So there are deviations. Now, in the method of the museum lighting, apart from the color transfer, an important parameter is the joint parameter of discomfort, which we assess with the help of the dialects. I would like to mention that. And with the help of this light fixture, using the example of this light fixture, there is a source of light. There are two sources of light. And if we do not use plug-in, then the visitor will see just a rectangular shape. And so in reality, there are 2 sources of light with dialects. So with the discomfort indicator is 19. So this is also important. It's important to have proper calculations and to check dialects. So dialects does not see the structure of the light fixture. So what have we done with the purpose? So if we go back to the color transfer, then our company over a year analyzed over 1,000 positions of our light fixtures. We conducted the deviation, CRI, the accuracy index, and analyzed with high CRI what a particular index of accuracy was, how they correlate with each other, and how they change. And within our company, we are using the method TM30 for the index of accuracy, and we divided our the lenses into several groups, and according to the color transfer. And we developed the marking for the light fixtures, class A and B, with CRI and TM30. And our managers can provide exact information concerning each of the light fixtures following each of the examples and samples. So there's information concerning the complete spectrum. And here is an example concerning the calculation of the ultraviolet radiation. It's just an example. There's a regulating documents concerning the radiation, the illumination, but they also regulate the spectrum of ultraviolet radiation. Shouldn't be 5 microwatt per square meter. And we're using this parameter for analysis as part of the fact that the LEDs have the dose of ultraviolet mostly in the visible area, but in reality, the dose of ultraviolet radiation is quite high, and we control it with our live items. And we have carried out them with the help of special calculators of the International Commission and radiometers. So it's 44 microwatt for square meter. So this was calculated for paintings. Now, I would like to draw some conclusions and say that it's important to consider the following thing when we make calculations for the museum lighting: the color transfer in all directions, because a painting is not a dot, it's not a point, but it's a certain area. The fallouts, the ultraviolet dose of radiation, and it's also important to mention here specifically that it's necessary to transfer to TM30, because TM30 makes it possible to exclude the subjective attitude of the observer and to move towards the specific photometric characteristics. And the designers, the architects, will be able to understand better the results, control the fallouts. And I would like to invite all of you to follow the standards that we have today. Thank you. Questions? Allow me to. No, I will happy to answer your questions, of course, but first I would like to thank the team for all the work done. Thank you. Where can we download the plugin? The plugins and dialogues, you open dialogues, and then you will find the names of the companies that cooperate together, that work together, and you can download it. At the coffee break, I can give you the QR code for the plugin. Moscow Kremlin Museum Chief Engineer. Well, thank you very much. That was very interesting. My questions are probably not exactly concerning the topic of your presentation, but as for the budget of the museum. Now, we can buy products, lighting devices from you, following the respective federal laws, 44 to 13, and there is a respective resolution of the government concerning that says that we need to follow the principle to buy from the national manufacturers and buy equipment that is in the register of Russian industries. Your light fixtures, are they within this register? I understand that each modification should be under individual numbers. If there is no number like that, then a budget organization simply cannot buy from you. Well, thank you for the question. No. I would rather have your contacts, and I'm an engineer in light engineering, a light engineer, and work in designing, but we have product managers who will give you exact answers, and let's exchange contacts, and then you will get the answer. Otherwise, I'm afraid of giving you some untrue information, if I may put it that way. And thank you very much. I'm always happy to listen to you. No, this Saturday, I came to one of the customer in retail, and they have a showcase lit with blue color. I measured the CIE and it was 80 plus. For a store, it's probably a bit lower. That's needed. I did not notice that the color temperature there was 17,000 Kelvin. So I also mentioned measured fidelity and came to the conclusion that we should also regulate the temperature and limit the color temperature somehow, as it's obvious that it's blue color, although it's so. The color transfer is good, but the color temperature is very high. That's an interesting matter, because how do we perceive that? Is that the spectrum of the source, the spectrum of the refraction, and the perception and sensitivity. And so as a result, we get perception of the artifacts by the intensity and brilliance and luminosity. So
Интересное решение. Интересно, как клиент, покупатель.
that's interesting, indeed, how it works. And what do the customers of that particular store think? We're open for discussion. We work on this method of the marking and items that need to be controlled properly, like the color temperature. Are there any mobile instruments that help us to measure? Yes, I demonstrated the radiometer. The 1030? Yeah, no, I do not know how much this equipment might cost. Yes. No, I cannot answer your question. Yes, colleagues, if there are no more questions, thank you very much. Right, we'll break. It's 2 o'clock masterclass, and we meet back here at
There will be a presentation, architecture and illumination of new Chersonesus museum complex. Good afternoon. Today, I'll be referring to a very important project for the town of Sevastopol and for cultural museum space of entire Russia per se. It's New Chersonesus company, Martin Rus. I'm its representative. It's a large holding company encompassing the company Martin Rus, manufacturer of the equipment, and the company creating the concept of illumination, inner engineering, doing the projects, blueprints, pre-feed, and construction of different illumination system, MRSPs, control the system, and Verlucci, the distributor of lighting fixtures. The complex of New Chersonesus was constructed within very brief time span, within 1 year. It was a high-scale cultural location in Sevastopol. It's very important from the standpoint of our history and culture. That's where Prince Vladimir was baptizing Russia. And Crimea in the history of contemporary Russia is a very important region indeed. The area of lit facades is more than 70,000 square meters, and the area of the entire territory of the complex is more than 140,000. It's 22.2 hectares. The project of illumination is absolutely unique and magnificent. It's unparalleled. among the others implemented in the territory of Russia when it comes to museum cultural sphere. More than 8,000 lighting fixtures were used for illumination of facades and of the entire landscape of the complex. That way, its nocturnal image is absolutely unique. It can be changing due to different lighting scenarios at night. I'm going to show you a video trailer so that you'll get the general idea about the scope of the project. There was supposed to be music to follow, but well, I can get music. So you can see lots of buildings illuminated within the frameworks of this project, and not just in classical white illumination, but also in different chromatic light scenarios, which are changing throughout the course of time and when they're dedicated to different celebrations and festivities. The amphitheater was illuminated by the same token as the adjacent branch of Center Artec and Children's School of Arts. As to the details, every light fixture was packaged very carefully, and then it is well integrated into the complex's space, because it was created in pseudo-historic style. It was very important to carefully embed all these set of lighting fixtures. We use standard positions, linear lighting fixtures, spotlights, and also the architects of Sretenka workshops created unique metallic landscaping lighting fixtures. As you see, different sites have got different location of the lighting equipment due to the peculiar attributes of the architecture, and correspondingly the light patterns are different. It was very important to take into account to have an integral image, wholesome image of the space and its integration into unique scenario of light dynamics. The Museum of Russian Orthodox Christianity is the landmark from the standpoint of architecture and backlighting, its complexity and vivacity and impressiveness. That's where we can see full unraveling of the range of different light accents. This light is not just showing off different light spots, but it accentuates and underscores different architectural details. You can see three colors scenario here. It's not just the same color solution for all the buildings. For example, for the Museum of Crimea in Russia is different, but when it comes to light dynamics, it all works as an integral whole, an ensemble. We also worked on the illumination of the interior of the Museum of Crimea, Nova Russia, New Russia, like the inlet group entrance, reception, check room where visitors leave their coats. It was white illumination there. Bottom line is the unique system, which for the first time in Russia was implemented on such a high scale, is the uniform system of controlling and managing light dynamic sites. Our company is engaged in creation of light scenarios for many buildings, edifices, bridges across Russia, all over the country. And in St. Petersburg, there are lots of different sites which we did. As to New Chersonesus, we created a system on the basis of fiber optics via VLAN, WLAN. All they are connected. Each one has got their own server, and using the protocol during CRDM, it's possible to control the entire complex in an integral way, and also to get the feedback from each site in order to pinpoint potential defects and debugging them. We have created the interface for controlling architectural backlighting and interior illumination, which according to the MSDM protocol exercises full control over the entire illumination of the complex. For that, we use node system, and graphic interface reflects the main scenarios for the operations of museum complex of Chersonesus. Altogether, there are 6 main variants of the scenario. Each one of those could be reswitched at any moment of time. They can be controlled manually or automatically according to a special schedule. Biostatic wide standard scenarios are everyday standard conventional scenarios. It's warm white light, 3000 Kelvin, and backlight is split into the groups, and each one is manually fine-tuned so that similar elements or identical elements in different buildings would be lit with the same same luminance. Festive cloud, the flag of Russian Federation. Here, aside the demonstration of the tricolor flag, there is also small pulsation present here, which imitates the slight flutter of the flag, and we can slightly dim one of the parts of it for 1 second. Another festive mode, it's a golden color, a very mild accents of squashed red color, reddish color rather. It's a cyclic element every 30 minutes. There is the animation of the activation of illumination, sunset scenario acts simultaneously with the dawn. When the sun sets fully, it turns into conventional everyday standard white scenario. In the morning at the sunrise, there is the reverse transfiguration. There is light, dynamic, and chromatic dynamic mode, which is different from the golden mode because it's polychromatic. Different colors are used here, but the backlighting is very delicate and not as bright as in the scenario of flag of Russian Federation or dynamic scenario. The cycle is set off every 15 minutes when the colors are changing. And the festive scenario, the brightest one is for shows, festivals, synchronization with musical performances. The entire complex is colored in a uniform palette of very bright luminant colors. The project became the finale winner of the Russian competition, Russian light design, and it was Golden Chersonesus Award of 2025. Aside this project, we have got a vast experience and background of working in St. Petersburg. You can see the key landmarks in St. Petersburg, Oranienbaum, Pushkin, and Paulus. They were backlit using the equipment of our company. By stock taking of my presentation, I would like to suggest an idea how the comprehensive integrated lighting or museum ensemble in St. Petersburg could be done. It's a recreation park, which is not far away from here. It's frequented by St. Petersburg residents. It needs more scenarios for evening to unravel this architectural natural environment and in order to attract more visitors in the evenings and it can become the hallmark of this project and the hallmark of different festivals regularly held out there. Thank you very much for your attention. As to the questions, you may ask them one-on-one. Maybe on the sidelines of our conference, because we have got company representatives here, you can approach CEO of our company, Emerspace, Vladimir Golubyev, who was deeply engaged in this project. So you may approach him about the details. Martinez company now finished up the architectural illumination of the stock exchange historic building located on the spit of St. Basil's Island. It's just a purple magenta color illumination, but local residents were disconcerted, asking questions full of concern. What happened to our stock exchange? We should do sort of awareness raising among the public at large about what we're going to say. Thank you for mentioning that. As to historic building of the stock exchange, shortly it will be displayed in all those scenarios.
Now we invite our next speaker. Microphone. The managing partner of Black Race and light artist, author of the technology, slide mapping. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I'm Pavel, and today I will speak about myself, about my experience at the company, technologies, and then we have three ideas, three themes rather. for the application within the museum context. I call my presentation the light for the museum. We can work inside, but we mostly work outside. So I'm Pavel Derbenko, and I'm an slide artist, and I used to work in the theaters and the concert halls in the Kremlin, and then thought of the technology for artistic lighting in the urban conditions, and we were awarded a lot of prizes for that. But we sort of revised the architectural lighting. Let's take the Okan building. Here, there is a possibility of using light fixtures for that, of course, and I'm actually emphasizing all of that too much, but the facades, what kind of problems we're dealing with here, you understand. So there is a dark building. How can we illuminate it without damaging it in any way? So it can be flooding light. So the light fixtures installed without touching the walls of the building. First of all, the windows suffer. We cannot provide the proper lighting of the windows, and it's uncomfortable for the residents. And then, of course, there is too much light around. It's uncontrolled lighting. It's difficult to position it properly on the building. So what do? We remove the we retained the advantages and removed the disadvantages. So in reality, we have the same power of the equipment and capacity, and we added slides. And so with slides, we can refocus the light on the windows. So that is the basic way of controlling the light. We light the building, removing the drawbacks of the flooding lightning. You would say it is flat because all the architecture seems to be lost, but we can add shades, and thus we can create volume in the architecture. We can emphasize the details of the architecture. Then we can, right. So here we are. And so we can create depth through the shades in the slide, and we can also have a mock-up for the architecture. So sort of putting on a sort of a suit of the architecture, adding certain details. It doesn't have to be artistic. It doesn't have to be bright and multicolored. It can be very delicate, warm, white lighting. So these are the documents of ours, which prove that we are competent enough that we are the right holders, and we were the first to develop this technology and to describe it and promote it. And now other slides which emphasize the importance of that. We carried out an experiment for the hotel of Aqua Park. You can see these squares. Actually, they help us direct the light. This slide, that's a jewelry-like piece, very fine glass. On the glass, you can find those slides in order to get the full color image. And then on the building, we can see how it works. So we can see the foam, we can see the solid parts, and we can block the light getting into the windows. How can we use that for the cultural heritage sites? Without touching them, we can create an image like that, emphasizing all the details, all the bricks, so to speak, all the columns and everything else. Now, this is the case of ours, which demonstrates the difficulties we come across and cope. At the present, our work is unprecedented in the world. I don't think anyone is close to us in this sense, in the system of light managing through slides. Now, we work on the 1st of May, and there's a lot of cases. We have accumulated quite a lot of them, and there's no need to demonstrate everything. Just saying that we can work with large facades, and we can carry out very complex projects, and we are allowed to work, we're trusted to work on the buildings of the public authorities, and that's what we will see on the 1st of May. this year. So the first part, we can work with architectural lighting of the facades of museums and cultural heritage sites. Second, we will talk about the residential areas where the buildings are without any particular architecture, so to speak, but we can somehow decorate them. If it is direct light, it's not going to be interesting, but we can create pictures on them. We can create pictures in the space where people live. That's much more interesting. And we have an idea which is not being implemented yet and not even suggested, but we have some ideas concerning it, and I will speak about them today. Now, here are the images of high art, and they move towards people. The matter is that there is a certain cultural inequality of the regions, small industrial towns where people work in large companies, at large enterprises, but it's not always possible for them to travel to Moscow, St. Petersburg, and to contact the masterpieces of culture. So we suggest a collaboration where museums, galleries are sources of these pieces. We, a technological company, can carry out this work, and major corporations involved in social programs are willing to take part in these programs. These problems of cultural inequality of the regions is indeed the problem. So they are deprived, those who live there are deprived of that. And of course, the society requires unity. Museums, new formats of popularization of their collections. Corporations think of how to carry out social programs in the most proper way with high quality. You can see the solutions. We have a lot of side walls, blank walls, and there is a lot of beautiful paintings, and we can create in the small towns in the big towns as well. These galleries and the paintings can be displayed there, promoting thus brands of different museums and collections. Now, it can be a major project with the popularization all over Russia, and I'm quite sure that it is quite possible to carry out this work, and the cultural mission means that this all moves closer to people with public sector support, and it can be a major media event indeed. The partners are public corporations, private business, and who have social programs. They are involved in improvement programs in the cities, and so we suggest this solution. We're willing to discuss these decisions and solutions if you're interested in them. So what is the mechanics of implementation? We can discuss it with the curators of the galleries and museums, and selecting the locations for that. I'm quite sure the cities and the towns are willing to take part in that, demonstrating these events and providing media support. Here are my contacts. You can retain them. We're almost always ready to be in contact. And allow me to demonstrate another thing. It concerns the lighting of sculptures. So we have another site. Once you so if anything, I'm here, so you can always get my contact information from me. Just come up to me once we finish the session. So here we are. Right. For sculptures, our experience. Sculpture, the Mother of Buryatia, 15 meters high. And usually the lighting is from down below, so it's upwards, not downwards. But there appear shades which are not that acceptable for human beings. We usually look, and then of course with the nostrils, the chin here are somewhat distorted. The face is distorted as a result. So we put on the national costume on the sculpture, and there are two projectors. Beyond there is an industrial area. So the two projectors, left and right, and you can see that here she has. Well, you can see the depth. You can see the folds, and over here there are two layers of projection, right and left, and the pattern is there. The pattern is visible on the sculpture. And since this is a girl, well, of course, she can have several attires. Each of them is a national costume of the indigenous people of Buryatia. And the scarf, the hadat, the Buddhist scarf, is very important. And so it is possible to change the clothing in connection with specific events in the history of these ethnic groups. So that means we can make the sculpture live. During the daytime, it is there, classical looking, but at night, we really sometimes want to see more color. We want to see life that is a bit more brilliant and bright. And so that also means that we can look at a solution like that within the museums. Here are some of the cultural heritage sites with the cultural code reflected. So the technologies are almost unlimited, and we definitely control light, manage it, and are willing to work with any sites. A small video concerning our work on the government house. No? No way? No, we can't. No. Doesn't work. Oh, no. There we are. There are 18 segments there, 4 layers, in order to increase the luminosity level. All was done within a very short period of time. Here is our production of slides, equipment, and all the work necessary for the start of the work. We have a lot of different types of equipment, and thus we can work on the sites like that. 120 meters from the facade of the building. That's the distance between the facade and the equipment we use. And for every festive day, we can flood this building with light. Thank you. Questions? Thank you. That is most interesting. Technology is interesting. I work on research of light graphics in architectural lighting. I wonder if you worked on the master plans of the lighting in whole regions and cities, or maybe you work on one of those at the moment and you can suggest something for the future, or work with the design code with the help of projection. Now, we first devised all of that, then we began to test, and then first of all, we had to go with the carry out the work with the equipment, with the slides, and we haven't arrived at master planning yet within our concept. Although I do believe that it's better if there is a panorama in one style, street, let's say, if it is not just one focus, but that's a sort of flooded design for a residential area, let's say, for several white buildings, the new residential area. I don't know that there's no need to now flood them with light, but we can have a systematic approach to those with some sort of a pattern on the facades, and this can attract attention with a particular decor. I was invited to the expert commission of the uniform light universe, and we are working on the regulations in order to understand how all this is going to work within the master plans. So that's what we're doing now, using our concept. I wish you great success with that. And equipment, is that your equipment? Do you manufacture it? Yes. Initially, so there is GOBA, the projection equipment. As an artist working with light, I know all of this quite well. We worked on the technology in Chertonovo, where it is so dark. We were thinking of the facades and how to display pictures on those, understanding that we couldn't send light to the windows. So that is why we speak about slide mapping, because the other terms are not that clear to our customers, like GOBA. So we first we worked with our own projector. Technically, it was difficult to carry out this work because with the valves after 3,000 hours, we are actually able to see the segments and within color segments and different sorts of colors. So we had to use LED technology, but at the time there was first 300 watts, and it makes it possible to work with the facades of the buildings. We carried out prototypes, both burned down because they had not been tested properly. We went to Europe, then to China, realized that none of their equipment was for high quality implementation. So we began to work on our own equipment with our partners. And so to make sure that everything is reliable, and we also need to think about the capacity and the voltage of the equipment. So all the experience accumulated over this period of time is integrated in our devices. That's a most interesting project. I have a question. How do you fight dust and humidity? How do you fight dust and humidity? How do you protect against pollution? Sooner or later, lenses are covered with dust and with dirt mixed with water drops. Hermetic body of the instrument, and dust and humidity do not get there. Only the outside glass might get polluted, but in a horizontal position, it's really not that significant. At an earlier stages, we had situations when we had very powerful equipment and we couldn't work with IP65, and so there was humidity inside, but we don't have these problems at all nowadays. It's all was resolved. For dusty cities, it's quite permissible then. There is no need to clean with a sort of a brush every other day. No, maintenance is necessary, but once in 6 months, let's say, wiping the glass. There's no significant problem. Inside, there is no dust. Thank you. Now, how are you making calculations when the device is at an angle? How do you make the calculations when there is an angle and you have to make the calculations concerning the windows? Because, that is the essence of our technology. Our equipment is on the supports on the roofs, and the conditions are far from being ideal. So if we at an angle upwards, of course, there is a wave. So we need to think about the compensation of that. We produce the compressed images in order to get everything properly, in order to avoid the windows. That is the essence of our technology. If we're talking about the Gova projection, there is a building, there is some sort of a painting or a picture on it, stretched, and so when we compensate for all the distortions, well, then we set that illuminated picture on the painting as if it has always been there. Thank you. Any other questions? As I know, there are mostly 2 projectors used.
4 проектора сведены в единую картину.
There are 74 different projects together. Last question. Thank you very much for your presentation. It's a cool technology. It's wonderful, but it's not always possible to place lighting fixtures on the buildings. It's cool, but there are many buildings which are just hidden behind the trees. Let's say, are there any limitations? This technology is not the one fits for all remedy. So to put it, as regards the trees in front of the buildings, sometimes they are interfering. Sometimes we're bypassing the poles. So we can bypass certain obstacles, and we discuss it with the customer. So trees sometimes are interfering, but it could be a compromise. The customer would enter the compromise with us because it's not allowed, let's say, to cut those trees in front of the building, blocking the view. But it's possible to reach a compromise and it will look really well. As to light technical calculations, we're all doing all the measurements and remove all the aberrations. We do very exact technical calculation. Thank you. Thank you all. Next speaker on PASEV, independent expert documents of higher category, how they should be dealt with. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Today I'll be speaking not just on my behalf, but on behalf of all the photograph funds, collections, and different pictures as well, different photographs. I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to the organizing committee which invited me to have a presentation at the conference, and I'll underscore a very important topic in the sphere of the preservation of world cultural heritage as the safety preservation of photographic documents, which are the only visual, authentic, and valid source of information about the past. There is a very complex chemical composition makes those documents rather short-living. And we should create good conditions for storage and exhibiting of those documents. Major instrument to obtain photographic image is light. Photograph is like light writing if we translate it from the Greek language, but at the same time, it's one of the main reasons of their degradation. Presently, photographs are perceived as images. Previously, it was a multi-step, sophisticated, complex process. And so it was very labor intensive, and they should not be destroyed due to the wrong conditions of the storage. In 1855, Royal Photographic Society of Great Britain created a commission on studying the issues related to stability of pictures. So they figured out how it's possible to retard the physical decay of the photograph. They were first used for just admiring them, looking at them. And so now it's most unsatisfactory degree of preservation of old photographs. The reason is not just the impact of light, but also in compliance with other important conditions, so we can lose the visual information carried by photo documents, and it's irreversible. How can we rescue those photographic objects, and how were they creative as to the way of obtaining those images? All the types of photo documents are split into visible, devices, all the processes of 19th century, different imprints on cellular pictures and others. This device is about the fact that light-sensitive paper is placed in a special frame, is exposed to sun rays until the image has got necessary contrast. Thomas Wedgwood used that in the end of 19th century. In 1724, for the first time, it was applied like silver is darkening under the light. So it was Henrik Schütz, professor of anatomy, and he proved that sensibilized sites depend on chromatic waves as well. Then there is the chronology and very interesting practical applications of silver properties. It was done by a French researcher. He was creating the labels for his medicine. How was it possible to fix the photographic image? Of course, there was a Henry Hochschild. He started his experience from those photogenic drawings, photographs on paper. Keres was obtained through two stages: imprints or on the saline paper, on the salty paper. That was the evolution of photographic process. You can see the matters seals. That's how first masterpieces were created, just like that. And the speed of printing the photograph depended on the intensity of the exposure to sun rays. It was very infrequent when there were sunny days in Great Britain. Next way to obtain the image is chemical restoration after illumination of a paper and formation of latent image due to chemical evolution of the process of printing. It was just quite possible. It was bromide which was used. The evolution of photographic processes also depends on the evolution of the sources of light. Initially, mostly sun rays were used here. Later on, photographs could do pictures inside the buildings. Then they used photographic amplifiers, close-ups, and they use sun as the main source of light. And then arc lamps were used. It was safe. I would like to get down to the next topic of my presentation, is the degradation of photo documents. The biggest problem is the irreversible dimming of the image and appearance of other defects due to chemical ways of creation. Due to streamlining and improvement of the process, we couldn't avoid all the processes, all the problems. There could chemical processes which happen every second. After primary treatment of document, there are latent damages which could become visible when there is undue storage rule under the sunlight, let's say, because it's irreversible, damaged by light. We should keep that in mind during exhibitions. There are different damages here: aesthetic changes and alterations and destruction of microstructure of the materials, changes at the chemical level, which brings about partial loss of the image and its frailty and brittleness. So light is damaging the objects. We're aware of the amounts and intensity of light and the length of this exposure. This is very important for making decisions in illumination during storage and exhibition of photo documents. But it's not just only about light. When we exhibit photos, only the aggregation and fusion of different other parameters would give hope that this photograph would live on in future, because those documents are very vulnerable and restoration should be very cautious and careful. It's the extreme measure. There are lots of damages which are irreversible under light. Damages imposed by light depend on the time of exposure and the level of illumination. Documents could have different degrees of light sensitivity. They are split into different risk groups. As to the first level of light sensitivity, I'll say from the start that these parameters do not refer to the damaged photographs. Those photographs which are in unsatisfactory condition should not be exposed. should not be exhibited, only their copies. And we should also be aware that a photograph is a multifaceted, integrated definition and notion. It all depends on the chemical composition, physical structure. So in the next slides, you are going to see different names of photographic processes and the conditions of their illumination. Second level of light sensitivity, as you see here, you can see the calculation of the amount of light obtained over 1 year per one object. First level, second level of light sensitivity covers photographs with the poor primary treatment and other alternative processes. You can see them on the screen. I will not go deeply into the details of that. But there we go again. We can see which amount of photographic process is around for each photographic process. We should apply special rules for exhibiting and storage. Third level of light sensitivity of photo documents. It's imprints on the salt paper, aluminum, albuminum, also imprints and other photographic processes. In the very beginning, I mentioned that the degrading impact of light upon the documents has got a cumulative effect. If we know the history of the storage of this or that object, we take good care of that and we apply the rules of exhibiting for those objects as the most light sensitive objects. Fourth level of light sensitivity covers less vulnerable objects. It's a silver and gelatin photograph, but photographs should not have traces of chemical destruction or traces of primary treatment and so on. And so many are speaking about rather stable condition of carbon imprints, but carbon imprints are not always formed by carbon. By coal. Sometimes other synthetic pigments are used. This is more relevant for restoratives, but we should keep in mind that not all the carbon imprints have got low light sensitivity. There are different types of photographic materials. And in conclusion, I would like to say that I always compare photographs to people and restoration to medicine and to aesthetic methods. You can correct the physical appearance, as a restorer can say, but there could be mechanical damages, loss, ruptures, cracks, but as to chemical losses, dimming, and appearance of different spots. This is irreversible and it's activated after the sun rays. And of course, there could be magic metaphysical component of photographs. There are real ways to rescue the photo documents based on scientific research. And if you really care, do join us with your own ideas. We can join our efforts to implement this model to preserve those photographic documents. Unfortunately, those photographs which are irreversibly lost, we cannot make up for that, but we can at least try by joint efforts to preserve for the future generation the memory of the past. Thank you very much. Thank you. Questions? Thank you very much. Very interesting information. I have got a question and a request. Show the slide about the level 4 of light sensitivity of photographs. I have got two questions. First off, those recommendations Are they in line with current regulatory documents or just the tips? It's international standards for photo documents. We don't have such standards in our country, unfortunately. So I'm calling upon all the specialists working in this sphere to develop our own standards for exhibiting photo documents based on practical experience, not on theory, but on practice, hands-on experience. All the information should be compiled about restoration of photo documents, storage and exhibiting. All of that we've got from the Western world, but not from our country. And I think that we should bring it home to special that photo documents are most vulnerable objects for storage and most difficult for restoration. The other day I read through the guidebook of restoring all the materials were enlisted there, just even bone, feather, bones, but nothing was said about photo documents, about photographs. We cannot wait because photographs are dying every second as we're talking even. So it's irreversible losses. Thank you. Second part of my question, or it's rather a suggestion. Of course, would be interested in to participate in your project, but also because it's about the visible part of the spectrum. So these recommendations are about the visible part of the spectrum, but we're aware that we should also study infrared radiation impact. We do have certain regulations, I mean, international regulations, international guidelines are just maintaining that the heating should be reduced and so on, but they're not very specific, very technical in details. And if it's possible to do the experiments, yes, aside being independent expert, I'm an associate of International Center on Restoration. So I'm engaged in development of the sphere of preservation of photographic heritage. So light exhibitions and so on for photographs are very important. So we can do artificial aging, working with the copies, original imprints, because all the processes, photographic processes could be reproduced. We will not be dealing with the originals. It's the entire project on creation of early imprints, then studying the impact of different spectra and so on. My presentation was all about calling upon those who are aware of the importance of the problem to start rescuing the photographic stocks. Thank you very much. Thank you. Our next speaker will be Valentina Kazantseva, Lights and Narrow Exhibition of Technical Characteristics to Visual Perceptions, Art Light Company.
Коллеги, всем здравствуйте.
Yes, dear colleagues, Ksenia and myself, we represent Art Light Company, and we have the honor of closing down the conference in the sense of presentations, of course, in the context of presentations. A few words about our company for those who are not familiar with us. This year, we are celebrating 30th anniversary. We are manufacturers of lighting equipment, mostly for interiors, and we work in St. Petersburg and Kolpino. As for logistics, now we deliver all over Russia, and we have a lot of implemented projects for different types of premises for which we produce equipment. And our own manufacturing facility makes it possible to customize, to change the power, the body, and the angle of dissipation. So we can do it with our own equipment, and we can also use non-standard solutions. the round rectangles, that's about us. We know how to do it. And in our assortment, you can find a lot of different types of equipment, tracking equipment, among other pieces. And this is very often used for museum lighting. So here we are. From the point of view of manufacturers, we'll speak about the technical characteristics. So you should all pay attention to about the capacity of different light fixtures that provide for high variability in lighting. And our 30 years of experience make us competent in this field, because we have moved from the use of metal and galogene. Originally, the first track systems were like that, the first track systems that appeared in the museums, and up to the expositions that we have today, which are much more focused, which are much more atmospheric. And so we have covered all of that. And that is a great joy for us to be able to see how the museum lighting changes and develops, how approach to it changes, and how it helps in the uncovering of the expositions, in the new approaches emerging and continuously used. So we will speak about characteristics, technical characteristics, which make it possible for us to change the visual perception. Now, well, previously, in the past, most of the lighting at the expositions was natural light, depended on natural light, and this was necessary for even flooding without distracting with contrast spots, because there are many artifacts very often at an exposition. Nowadays, mostly focused lighting used, which makes it possible to create an atmosphere within which the artifact is number one, where the color is emphasized. So with the help of light, it is possible to create an atmosphere of the exposition and to uncover its content in a proper way. So we will speak about some technical characteristics to be considered. Now, we touch on some basic requirements, which we should always remember. We should start with the limit of illumination, which is necessary for the protection of the artifacts themselves, to avoid the damage to the fibers, let's say, to the fabrics. So there's some sensitive artifacts like fabrics or manuscripts, and so light for them is most important, because the long-term effect of light can damage them, can kill them step by step. And for these artifacts, we have, as it has already been said by other speakers, not only the amount of color is needed, but there are other factors to be considered. But the time of disposition is also important. But then mid-sensitive items. There's quite a lot of galleries that follow this particular standard. And with the average sensitivity, now that's a different story. The light does not have that serious effect on those, but still too much light might lead to photochemical aging, and we must consider the light falling on it. So the low sensitivity items and ceramics, stone, and so that the light doesn't have that serious an impact. There is no global aging, so it is believed that the limit here is non-existent, but in reality it does exist. And so light here exists not only for the demonstration of an artifact, but here we can actually accentuate the texture, the details, and sort of play with the lighting, expanding the boundaries. And the next requirement is the quality of color transfer. So that's what we are working on, and that's what we have in the standards. Let's not forget about R9. It's already mentioned today. The fact is that this deep red color, this index is very important, particularly in painting, so that the color of face would not look Earth-like. And so we must consider all of that in order to make sure that the marking is there. TM30, that's a most modern standard with the intensity, saturation criteria. And so the accuracy is here as compared to the reference shades and colors. And the intensity is there. And so some are skeptical about that, but how dim are the colors? How dull are the colors? So it's less than 100, it's dull. Over 100, too much color. No, the very basic parameter, protection against the harmful radiation, ultraviolet, which leads to the fading, or infrared radiation that leads the damage of the surface for any material, which is bad, of course. And then the analytical parameters, we're using a narrow bundle for the creation of certain focuses, for the lighting of small artifacts, and wide optics, 40 to 60 degrees for large artifacts, and for general lighting, if we need that sort of flooding. Optics can be changeable, and that's what we have been using. We have sort of covers, curtains on those, because when we see a painting on the wall, we try to avoid the oval or the round spot. So we're using the curtains in order to emphasize a particular part of the painting or the painting within a frame. Then another important thing with the comfort, visual comfort. And so we reduce the indicators of blinding using anti-glare equipment, different types of framing masks. So everything that makes life most comfortable. So reducing the presence of glare on the reflecting surfaces, showcases, in order to not to distract the visitor from the exposition itself, in order to make it look very attractive. And so then the color temperature, another important indicator. At the conference, it has been already said that there is no universal color temperature for the museum lighting. Indeed, 4,000 Kelvin with this temperature, the white color looks more attractive, metal, stone, marble. So for the lighting of those textures, it's better to use colder spectrum. As for 3,000 spectrum, this emphasizes the wood, gold, and different paintings. So with this spectrum, warmer lighting is better. So quite often, these the methods are used when, depending on the exposition, we mix the color temperatures. When we use the color temperature that is neutral, let's say 4,000 Kelvin in the halls where there are exhibits, and in the recreation areas or the relaxation zones with warmer color temperature, exactly for the visitors to change the focus, to relax when they visit cafeteria or the recreation zones, in order to refocus later for the exhibition. Another important thing is the color contrast. Yes, quite often, and the light contrast, quite often we come across the expositions when there is a very serious deep contrast between the artifact itself, on which there is light, and the environment. So here, this is permissible, we think, only in case there is a meaning to that, when there is an emotional impact involved. But this contrast should not be that strong, because the eye, in the process of looking at the exhibits, might get tired, and there will be visual discomfort. inevitable. So now, some examples from our practice. We'll speak about the types of the expositions and the way we can interact with those. So we'll begin with the showcases, small items in the showcases, and light on those. And here we can see small showcases, small, no, indeed, they're quite small. The task was quite difficult because most often the distance from the light source and to the artifact was just 10 centimeters. So there was a question, of course, raised. Even with the low power light fixtures, it's practically impossible to avoid the light spots, the burn, so to speak. So there was a question of what particular material should be used for the artifacts. And there was porcelain here, not that sensitive. The porcelain can stand the light burn, 400 lux. And the distance between the artifact and the equipment leads to the choice of the materials. And so this was 15. So sometimes we used, as here on the left-hand side where there are vases, there was a dispersed light. So the lighting came from down below. So they could see that there was light actually coming from up and down. And so the idea was to demonstrate the volume of the artifacts, because had we had the narrowly directed light at a small distance, then of course the shape would not have been displayed properly. While on the right-hand side, you can see the vertical slides. Here is the complex system, and well directed and properly directed, because the purpose here was to illuminate the locations in gray on the wall, because there were special artifacts placed there. So what was positive about that, that we can actually direct these sources of ours at any item, at any artifact, and this is quite acceptable. There can be good lighting, and the contrast level is also adequate. These sources of light can be turnable and standing. Now, then we can have a look at the lighting of the larger exposition halls. Here you can see how the accentuated lighting works. On the right-hand side picture, you can see the contrast there. The contrast we have already mentioned. We can see the artifacts at the exposition, not forgetting at all that we need to have some general lighting, because the premises is of active architectural design. We're also providing extra light on the columns, not super bright, as you can see, but there is reflected light, and there is even flooding light, and it provides a better, more even flooding, calm enough. But at the same time, the artifacts are quite visible, and the visual accent has not been shifted from those. And in the passage areas where there are corridors, let's say, where there are present some exhibits, here, apart from the focused light, there are light fixtures with a wider angle, which provide flooding of the whole space. Now here, we talked about the accentuated lighting. Now, when it is possible to propose or even to have this type of flooding, we can use it. It's a museum of winemaking with cylindric barrels, and so the attention is focused on them. And this is not just a type of decorative items here. So what was important here? Well, of course, we had to think about the contrasts, and we were setting out the items that were in principle important for that particular premises, and focusing attention on the old barrels. And what we have here is that we have an accent on the necessary items, and at the same time, we had some light fixtures for the overall lighting, so that the corridors, the passage areas are well lit. Now, what was the why do we use the light fixtures here with different tuning of optics in order to make sure that within one and the same fixture we can define properly the angle, so we can see the accent lighting and the overall lighting, general one. With accentuated lighting, the items seem to be all together next to each other, but it's so within the framework of that particular project, the customer asked the general lighting in order to make sure that we can see the overall picture. What is positive here? If it is a permanent exposition, we can use one approach. If it is a temporary exhibition, we can use one and the same fixture for different purposes, for better perception. Let's say different angle of optics permits us to do that within one and the same space. And now the devices themselves and the potential. I would like to mention the change of the ray and the direction of the ray. Now, at the conference, we have already spoken about these approaches when the paintings were defined by the contour. There's the gogo projector with the so that there is not only difficulty of getting the correct and right shape of the painting itself, but with our fixtures, there is a potentiometer with the possibility of avoiding the effect of the light box. And when the picture is lit within the contour and it looks too bright, so we can actually resettle the light spot, and we can control the luminosity. And now, with the help of this function, we can optimize the illumination, and we can direct it directly. We can direct it at the exhibits when they are various and of different shape and size. So well, the color temperature can be changed without the change of the equipment. Either we use the filters, we can see how the filter changes the perception of the spot itself, and this effect can be achieved with the help of the deep switches on the body without the change of the light exposition. So we can change the color, so we can have 3000 Kelvin depending on the goal set. And why are we doing that? Because in order to avoid the effect of the light box when we change the bundle, then we should not forget the sizes. When we use one and the same type of the fixture for temporary and for permanent expositions, when we have the equipment of the same type of capacity for certain sizes of paintings and other exhibits, we this particular luminosity might not work. And let's not forget about the materials. They can be different, and we might need to reduce the concentration of the beam, the bundle on the artifact. And we would like to show a case we work on now, and the way how the different materials at the exposition affect the level of illumination. We can see that the exhibits here are quite sensitive, and here by gradation, we can see that they're illuminated not that brilliantly. With all of that, the light is located in the proper way, and it all works. It works for the exposition.
I would like to mention that we always try to look at the level of illumination, not from the standpoint of our guidelines, but also vertical, cylindrical, horizontal illumination at the artifact. Because it could be a picture, canvas, it could be animal fur, or it could be fabrics, it could be bones, and we can see which light spots are all right with us, which aren't. We tried to share our experience with you. Ksenia Pervodchikova is the senior the designer, and also she is a trainer. She trained lots of students. You can turn to her if you need our services. Thank you very much. I suggest to listen to one more presentation by representative of the Hermitage, Daniel Barshuhin. He'll tell us how the museum can revive the pictures or animate pictures or sculptures, and how light is involved in that. Now, more than 10 minutes, please. It's sort of a surprise on behalf of the Hermitage. We'll speak about the promenade, the performances at the Hermitage halls, which goes on and on for several years. First, it was Flores projected with Austrians since 2023. There was a laboratory, the wonderful spring, whereby the Hermitage with students of Theatre Academy jointly prepares and hosts performances. What's the challenge of all that? Performances in a museum. Thing is that as we mentioned at day one of the conference, museum illumination is based on the principle of one big compromise between the preservation of the artifacts and their demonstration, the display to the audience. When we add up theater, performance, stage director, actors, we enhance all that thing, because the task of let's say, of a stage director is reaching the utmost visual expressiveness, artistic effects, and the tasks of the museum are preservation, just safety and security of the museum. Not just about commonplace everyday things, but other things, stop being black box, which many stage directors are dreaming to do, just to switch off the light so the light will be on the stage. But museum is a museum, and oftentimes after they prepare such performances, but they say maybe it's not quite proper for the museum. There should be some harmony, some balance stricken between such contradictory things and institutions. As an example of the utmost fusion of theater and museum is the photograph of 2023 General Staff Headquarters building, this performance, the Magic Spring. The actors were illuminated. We tried to reproduce that chiaroscuro, same as the one on the faces of people in the pictures. But another implication we encountered is cyclicity and necessity to iterate, repeat those performances for several months, several times a week. Let's say it's working hours of the museum, then it's closed, and 1 hour for the performance rehearsal after working hours of the museum, and tomorrow they start performing. And so what should be done? Mounting and dismounting those artifacts for a performance or just mount them only one time and to use them later on. Technical solutions since 2021, because it was a joint project with Austria, Chersonesus company provided us with the equipment, with the spotlights, with the control pocket someday. If you don't know, it's the system of control via Bluetooth, whereby in a centralized way, the control could be done from any gadget, from smartphone, tablet, and so on. And it will be possible to do the full recording. There are some disadvantages of it, unlike GenX, when you have to replace a device. We cannot come along with all the address like Dennis, and there were some instances when we had to write it all from scratch. Then we extended the assortment of equipment thanks to a local company, as Nikolai you've mentioned. It's light brushes, and we have got more diversity here. These tracking spotlights, tracking lighting fixtures, their advantage is that they could be embedded into existing system in case the truck is available in the hall, but there are situations when it's not. And so there are different projects in 2021 when we have to bring along and get and connect this truck to connect the wires and to cover, to hide them somehow. Everything came out all right. These are the premises of the Hermitage. Another one to use way of using all that it's autonomous lighting fixtures. We were most gratified to have them first, but during the implementation of the last project, they were so plentiful, so we had logistical problem. How should we recharge them all? I would like to dwell on the recent one of the projects, Pandora's Box and the Morning of Golden Light. Thing is that those projects are absolutely contrary to each other, so to put just the reverse. So there was the third floor of the Winter Palace, recently restored premises. One of those you can see on the slide. What's the problem for the theater, for the performance? White walls. And despite the fact that there is the bus wire, which is located on the floor in a convenient way, the beams do not get across the hall, but they go towards the wall of the whereby there is the track. Nothing is interfering with the visitor. Planes of the walls are illuminated. In the middle, there is a black spot. That's the conflict between museum and theatrical light, because the artist is standing here, he's standing inside of this black spot. It's necessary to adapt light, and we can see the actor here because extra lighting fixtures were embedded into the truck. And the beauty of the center is that when the performance is on, the lighting fixture is there, it's directed, it's mounted, even if it's off. And it remembers everything when it's off. When it goes on again, so that memory use. There is the autonomous equipment use. It's a small puppet show, puppet theater in the middle of the hall. It would have been very difficult to get it connected, so it was all done through the capacitor network. From the standpoint of contradictions between museum and the theater, visual contradictions, I could say that we reached amazing harmony here, because There were Buddha's halls, Buddha's performance. It was meticulous work on the costumes and the way they would fit into the interior. And we worked very carefully with the light because it was decided to leave the entire exhibition, not to move it backwards to the rear. This exhibition is illuminated and we just had actors there, and it's all very harmonious and beautiful. Another example. Next project is Pandora's Box, quite a recent project. It started quite recently, which is different from the Morning of the Golden Light. In many ways, it was located in New Hermitage antique halls, huge halls with very high ceilings. Not all those halls are well equipped technique-wise. The problem was that there is a three-phase bus wire there. So theoretically, technically, we could insert our lighting fixtures there, but we couldn't get them connected because this three-phase bus wire has got very low voltage. So we had to find way out of the situation. We have to somehow scale up this idea. So then we got it connected via cantilevers. Gold Morning of the Golden Light, by its very name, was supposed to be very light. It was very light and bright. Pandora's Box, everything was very dark and somber according to the artistic concept and device of the staging director. So idea was that those halls should be dimmer so that we would dim the lights to the lowest admissible level in order to create the deep immersion into that atmosphere, to enrich the visitors with this wonderful experience of getting immersed into all of that. After the closing hours of the museum, you'll never ever see that hall on floor 1 of the New Hermitages like that, like you saw them during that performance after working hours of the museum. At the end of the day, theater and museum could be quite compatible, provided you do the joint work every step of the way and search for new solutions and new ways out of the situation every time. If you have questions, you may approach me. You can discern me. I'm wearing this bright navy blue cardigan. Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Thank you. That's it. Thank you all. We wrap it up. Thank you all to those who've been here till the very end, listening to all the presentations. We'll have a tour around different artifacts, and we'll meet at the doors of the lecture hall. So you'll be toured around the building. Thank you all once again. We're going to send over the proposals for resolution, final resolution, and we'll expect the feedback from you. Thank you.